Ukraine is tracking Russia's navy everywhere. The Black Sea region is one of the areas where tracking is most intense. Russian navy ships are searching for holes to escape from Ukrainian intelligence across the vast Black Sea. However, even Novorossiysk is no longer a rear base. The Russian Black Sea fleet thought it would be able to relax after leaving Sevastopol and heading east. However, the Ukrainian Defense Intelligence Agency's plan went much further. Special forces affiliated with the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's main directorate attacked a ship belonging to the Russian fleet's MPSV07 multi-purpose ship project in the Black Sea on September 10th. Commissioned in 2015, with a unit cost of approximately $60 million, and known to have only 4 in inventory, this rare multi-purpose ship of the MPSV07 class was hit by a precision strike off Novorossiysk. Signs on the ground indicate that the chain that hit the ship was established by both naval UAVs and aerial UAVs. Therefore, Ukrainian intelligence may have employed a dual-pronged attack model at this point. While the airborne component employed electronic warfare jamming and decoys to distract radar attention, the surface-based unmanned high-speed platforms reportedly exploited their low radar cross-section and sea conditions to enter the target range. This tactic sabotaged the barriers at the mouth of Sevastopol, the straight-mouth nets, and the guard schedule throughout 2024. The difference in the sinking of this ship is that this time it was carried all the way to the Novorossiysk gate, considered the rear base. The timing window of the operation was also deliberate. The hours when patrol routes between ports were repeated and shift changes occurred were chosen. With the low noise and high surprise balance maintained under the target, the Pantsir and equivalent short-range air defense layers were too late. Even if there was an intervention, the USV's mass momentum and the warhead it carried were enough to cause system failure with a single hit. This ship, targeted by Ukrainian defense intelligence, was not just a piece of steel. It carried electronic warfare and electronic intelligence payloads. In other words, that hull was the eyes and ears of Russia's Black Sea fleet. With the ship's destruction, Russia's screen went dark instantly, and the fairy tale of a safe harbor was shattered. This frame is read as a blackout in the Black Sea. Because sometimes, in a navy, what is more destructive than sinking is preventing it from seeing and hearing. That is exactly what happened. When we delve deeper into the basic characteristics of the ship, we understand the essence of the matter better. On paper, the MPSV07 class appears to be a search and rescue and multi-purpose mission ship. But with the sensors and EW packages connected to the network, it is a valuable node feeding the maritime picture. For this reason, their numbers are kept low, their maintenance requires meticulous care, and their crew is highly trained. Having only 4 ships in inventory makes each one a separate insurance policy. The configuration introduced in 2015 raises the class's value to around $60 million due to expensive electronics and mission systems. It appears that Ukraine is targeting precisely this cost-effectiveness breaking point. Instead of directly sinking a frigate, cutting the sensor backbone that protects, directs, and feeds that frigate produces more panic at a lower cost. This is what happened off Novorossiysk. Signs of fire and system failure on the ship, followed immediately by the intervention of tugboats, left us with a clear picture. This picture took the Russian fleet out of action, at least for a while. Then there is the shipyard issue for repairing the ship that was hit after the operation. Repairing the hull is relatively easy, but procuring the mission electronics and sensor package is difficult under sanctions. The microelectronics and RF component chain is as sensitive as the sea route. Every node that is taken out of service means a supply puzzle. That is why it would be correct to use the word rare. There is no backup for what is rare, nor is there an equivalent. Russia will have to put such platforms back into service, even if they are worn out. This means permanent sensitivity. Sensitivity is an invitation for swarms. After this ship was hit, Russia has already issued an invitation to Ukraine to carry out more operations of this kind. So, in the coming period, we may witness more Russian ships being targeted in the Black Sea. So, is there a safe harbor left for the Russian Navy to take refuge in? The doctrine that says the East is safe when withdrawn from Sevastopol finds no basis in the age of unmanned swarms. Novorossiysk's land defense may be stronger, but the weakest link at sea is the harbor entrance and the nearby patrol node. Ukraine tested this earlier around Kerch. It paired naval drones with long-range FPV and reconnaissance UAVs to open corridors. The same approach worked in the latest attack. That's why the fairy tale of a safe harbor for the Russian Navy is over. Ukraine managed to build this system in the Black Sea without even using warships. This was not a single flash in the pan, but a series. In other words, Ukraine's pressure system in the Black Sea. Recall that on August 30th, the support tugboat Buk 2190 was hit in a night raid in Sevastopol Bay. This incident served as a prime example of the effect we mentioned. In fact, two Mi-8 helicopters were grounded in the same wave. A speedboat and a coastal surveillance radar in western Crimea were silenced on the same night. Also, remember the night attacks around the Project 22,160 patrol ship Sergey Kotov. The screens lit up one by one on the Kerch line, and then the port entrance protection was jammed for days. When the Olenegorsky Gornyak landing ship was hit, the EU and insurance markets raised the risk factor in the Black Sea to the upper limit. When the Kilo-class submarine Rostov na Donu was severely damaged in the dry dock attack in Sevastopol, the term attrition became a concrete reality for the Navy. Since then, it has not been necessary to crush the Navy directly in combat. It is enough to disrupt its port rhythm, maintenance schedule, and insurance premiums. The Novorossiysk case is a new link in this chain. The serial loss of fast patrol platforms along the coast has thinned the link that the Russian side calls the peripheral eye. If you've noticed, in Ukraine's attacks in the Black Sea, the Russian Navy first loses its eyes, then its ears. When the radar and EH nodes are disabled, the boats on the coast become vulnerable to being hunted down one by one. 3 strikes in different locations in one night, 2 strikes on another line the next night. This rhythm is forcing Russia's Black Sea fleet into the harbor. When the harbor is full, the only goal is to start the multiple defense paradox. Multiple defenses produce multiple mistakes. Multiple mistakes open a window to the next wave. That is exactly what the last attack did. For years, some dismissed the claim that Ukraine had established naval dominance in the Black Sea without even deploying a single warship as exaggeration. We can now say this represents a conceptual shift. Maritime UAVs like the Magura V5, FPV swarms, kamikaze naval platforms, and reconnaissance/mapping UAVs together form a new force. This force does not merely supplement expensive guided munitions. In some missions, it completely replaces them. A low-cost USV, combined with nighttime sea conditions, disrupts the classic radar and optical surveillance system. Moreover, its life cycle cost is lower than the annual fuel and maintenance cost of a frigate. We see every swarm wave, not every hit. Against all this, Russia's methods of protection against Ukraine's attacks in the Black Sea are ineffective. Nets pulled at the mouth of the strait, buoys, minefields, IR/acoustic sensors. It is believed that all these layers serve a slowing function, but none can achieve a stopping function on their own. Because to completely distinguish a low-profile, composite-coated, low-noise USV at sea, in addition to sensors, time, training, and the right engagement window are required. When the swarm arrives, the window closes. Low-cost FPVs on the air side engage straight-mouth defense with simultaneous saturation, while the real load approaches from below the waterline. Systems like Pantsir may be effective in single strikes, but tire in multi-axis, multi-target assaults. Novorossiysk is learning the same lesson today, and this lesson imposes more expensive watchkeeping on expensive hulls. Meanwhile, in the Black Sea, Ukraine's unilateral corridor initiative since late 2023 has effectively pierced Russia's blockade claim. Civilian ships planned routes and made departures and arrivals. The insurance market initially panicked, then created an adjusted risk premium. 2 things lay behind this. One was the increased risk of the Russian fleet leaving port. The other was the fatigue of coastal sensors. The Novorossiysk incident is reinforcing these 2 grounds. For the fleet to say it is present, it will need more fuel, more escorts, and to take more risks. This encourages a set of behaviors close to saying it is absent. We call this denial at sea and attrition on shore. The result is a real outcome in Kiev's favor. The following detail emerges in the Ukrainian Defense Intelligence's attack campaign in the Black Sea. The target bank is not just the hull, but the nodes that see the hull. Coastal external radars, mobile EH points, command and control cabins, and ELINT platforms roaming the sea. When these nodes are disabled one by one, blind spots form along the coast. A blind spot is a nightmare for any sailor, because you don't know where an unknown wave will come from. You double the watch schedule. When the watch is doubled, people make mistakes, And as they make mistakes, the next wave finds an easier path. The Novorossiysk strike moved this blind spot to the distant shore. Its psychological impact is even greater than its engineering impact. So, does Russia's navy have a chance to recover from this impact and renew itself? Due to the Straits regime, Russia cannot introduce new large warships into the Black Sea during the war. It has to make do with what it has. This means that the fleet is a non-renewable asset. A non-renewable asset is a daily target for cheap fleets. A platform that is disturbed every day protects itself by not going out to sea after a while. A platform that protects itself loses its strategic function. The Navy in the Black Sea is currently read through this equation. There are no new frigates or submarines. The existing ones are either in the repair queue or shuttling within the port. This makes Kiev's doctrine bolder. With the latest picture emerging, Russia is facing an incredible blackout in the Black Sea. Blackout at sea always brings the bridge to mind. The Kerch Bridge is the nerve center of logistics. As the eyes and ears on the coast tire, the bridge and the facilities at its base become more exposed targets. The ammunition food lines running through Azov are already sensitive. Now, when even a rear base is unreliable, protecting the bridge becomes a more costly game. A multi-pronged attack is expected here. That is, simultaneous pressure on the coastal EW node from USVs at sea, FPVs in the air, and cruisers. One must not overlook the heavy pressure on the bridge one day and on logistics every day. This rhythm will break the enemy's morale. A force with broken morale is nervous even behind the strongest armor. A nervous navy cannot manage civilian traffic along the coastline. This gives Ukraine superiority in the maritime domain. There is currently no data to convince those who say Russia will withdraw from the sea and attack from the air. Tactical profiles for penetrating beneath the S-300/400 layers along the coast are complex. Ukraine's long-range SAMS and mobile camouflaged batteries, especially in the west, are narrowing the window. Moreover, the ATACMS and GMLRS family, which are striking units on the ground, are also keeping air bases and fuel depots under rhythmic pressure. Being blind at sea comes at a higher cost than being blind in the air. Aviation does not close the gap at sea. At best, it is an expensive patch. Therefore, the fleet's hope of compensating with air power seems weak. The more it tries to compensate, the faster the attrition accelerates. And as it accelerates, the scenes we see today may repeat tomorrow. The consequences of a new shock that could repeat would be severe. The defeat in the Black Sea has powerful effects not only on the Russian Navy, but also on Putin and the command structure. The image of a fleet fleeing to different ports weighs heavily on the political center. As the chain of command oscillates between strict avoidance and risky patrols, the initiative of the commander in the field is dulled. Then improvised solutions that force civilian military platforms to see the same picture multiply. The deployment of rare hulls like the MPSV07 to patrol roles is a sign of this. This situation is understood as the tactical routine of strategic exhaustion, because when the fleet loses its primary function, you try to generate primary tasks from secondary platforms. This is always an expensive mistake. This is exactly what happened in Novorossiysk. After the last offensive operation, we can now clearly say that the Black Sea Fleet contributed much less to the war in Ukraine than initially thought. Items such as amphibious pressure, port blockade, and deep water patrol existed on paper. In the field, it turned into a model of avoiding risk in nearby ports. Although missile strikes from the sea continue, this is no longer part of the Navy's function. It is more like an extension of a fixed battery on land. The sea is not at the disposal of the Navy. The Navy is confined to the limits of the sea. The Novorossiysk shock is the embodiment of this confinement. Today, the statement that Putin cannot manage the Navy is not mere agitation, but a visible outcome. A command that cannot manage chains its existence to the port. A navy chained to the port loses the sea. We must also consider what the Russian side can do from now on. They will try to increase EW intensity and disrupt USV links. They will pull the inner layers of the port further in and build inner barriers in the inner bay. They will mobilize the coastal surveillance network and rely on hit-and-run radars. They will also increase airstrikes and try to burn the drone route at the port entrance. All of this may make some nights calmer on the ground, but it does not change the strategy, because low-cost persistence will eventually wear down the expensive layers. And in the worn-down layer, the weakest link is the human element. In this game, time is now working in Ukraine's favor. Let's summarize the latest picture. The rulebook has changed in the Black Sea. The cheapest platform threatens the most expensive asset every night. This is now called an accounting war, because whichever side keeps writing in the ledger longer is the one that leaves the table. The $60 million MPSV07 class ship, built in 2015, and of which only 4 examples exist in inventory, struck in Novorossiysk, was written into the most critical line of that ledger. The following note was added below that line: no rear base. After Sevastopol, Novorossiysk is no longer safe either. When the fleet's eyes close, the Navy's hand trembles. A trembling Navy does not leave port. A Navy that does not leave port leaves the sea to others. This is exactly what we are seeing today. Thank you for watching.